If you like my tutorials and want to support the channel, in addition to your likes, you can also do it from my Patreon page for the cost of a coffee a month. And if you want to move to the motion graphics zone, it gets serious here. You'll have access to all the project files, editable templates to put photos, logos, etc., plus significant discounts on my editing course. I leave the link in the description if you want to take a look. The first thing I'm going to do is import the file of the hand separated into layers as composition and document size. And by double-clicking, I'm going to enter this composition. With a right click, I'm going to convert these vector files to shape layers. And these Illustrator layers, well, I'm going to select them, and since they're no longer useful, I'm going to delete them. Now, what I have to do is make all these parts of the hand follow the movement of this layer here, which is the arm, which, by the way, I'm going to change the color of. And this layer that I have here, called reference, are some circles that show us where each joint of each finger is and of the wrist. And it's exactly where each one has to rotate. Well, I'm going to lock this layer. And now we can start to rig the hand, but we have to follow a hierarchy. With this, I mean that this part, the tip of the thumb, has to follow the middle part of the finger. This has to be related to this layer here, which is supposed to be the palm of the hand. And this in turn has to follow the position of this layer here, which is the arm.
By the way, if you like documentary-style editing, my course is now available. Although it's not just an editing course in which I tell you how to animate a sequence in After Effects and that's it, but I show you the whole procedure I followed to create this animation. From the initial idea to the final render, going through each and every phase of the creative process. I leave the link in the description in case you want to take a look at it.
Well, let's start with these two, which are the thumbs. I'm going to change their color. And now the tip of the thumb, well, we're going to relate it to the middle part. So, now if we rotate this layer, well, we see that it follows its rotation, but it doesn't do so from where the joint is supposed to be. So we have to select the Pan Behind tool, and using our reference layer, we're going to put the anchor point on this layer right here in the center of the circle. If we hold down the Control key, it will stick automatically. And here to the tip of the finger, the same, the Control key, and when we pass through the center of the circle, the anchor point will stick there. So, now if we rotate, it will do it correctly. In these two layers, we're going to do something else. We deploy the rotation of the two and the rotation of the fingertip. We are going to parent it to the middle part to get this effect. Okay, perfect. Well, we already have this finger. Now we are going to make the index finger. But the process is the same. We parent the tip of the finger to the middle part. I am also going to change its color. And now, for this middle part of the finger, we are going to put the anchor point right here, where it has the joint. Control key pressed, and it stays stuck there. The tip of the finger is the same, Control key pressed. Okay, perfect. We select the 2R key, and the rotation of the fingertip is going to parent it to the middle part to get the same effect as before. Okay, there it is. And the process is the same with all the fingers. Now we continue with the middle finger. We change its color, we parent the part of the tip of the finger to the middle part. And now, with the Control key pressed, we put the anchor point right there in the center of our reference layer. This one here is the same. Control key pressed, and it is automatically pasted there. What happens to these two layers is that I am not going to relate the rotation, because later I am going to animate it separately. Now we continue with the ring finger. We relate the tip of the finger to the middle part. We change the color of the layers, for example, green. And for the tip of the finger, we put the anchor point right here in the center of our reference layer, Control key pressed, and it fits perfectly there. This one here is the same, okay? We would have the little finger. For this layer of the little finger, we are going to put the anchor point at this vertex here. Control key pressed. Okay, perfect. Although we have already related the tips of the fingers to the middle parts, there are still some things to do, because look, we still can't manipulate the hand with this layer. So, all the middle parts of the fingers, the ones that end in 1, we select them, and the little finger as well. Okay, so all these parts, we are going to parent them to the wrist layer, which, by the way, I am also going to change the color. Okay, look. This wrist layer, well, we have to parent it to the arm layer as well. But first, we select the wrist layer, and again with the pan behind tool, we are going to put the anchor point right here in the center of our reference layer, which is where the wrist of the hand is supposed to rotate. Now, let's check. There we see that it looks perfect. This chess piece, well, we don't need to change the anchor point. We just select it and parent it to the wrist as well. Okay, there it is. With Control plus A, we select all the layers. And now, with right-click, we are going to create a null object. And this one is going to be called Controller. We select them all again and convert them to 3D. And now, the arm layer, we are going to parent it to this null, so we can move the whole illustration with this controller. Before we start the animation, we are going to do one thing. We are going to rename this composition and call it Rig Hand. Using Control plus D, we duplicate it and call it Hand Animation. We don't want to end up not liking the animation and have to rig the hand again. So in this way, we have a completely clean copy of the rig of the hand. We come to the animation composition, and this is where we are going to set up the scene. The first thing we are going to do is select the controller, and we are going to scale it down. We set it to 60%, and now we come to composition, adjustments, and well, I am going to make it 1920 by 1920. I am going to make it in square format, in case I want to publish it on social networks later. But you can also make it 1080 if you want. That also depends on each person's taste. At 30 frames and 10 seconds is enough for me. To keep this well organized, we are going to create some folders. Now, we are going to start with the animation. we select the arm layer, and this one as a reference, since we can now hide it. Now here, at the beginning of the timeline, press P and mark a keyframe in the position. And what we are going to do is take all the illustration here out of the composition. But, as we always do, we are going to put the exact values. Here I'm going to put 2,250 in X, in Greek Y, minus 450, and the Z-axis I leave at 0. Now in second 2, we are going to move the illustration back to the center. I am going to leave it more or less there, where the crown part of the chess piece is in the center of the composition, but I am also going to put the exact values. Here in X 540, in Greek Y and Zeta, I am going to leave it at 0. Okay, perfect. In second 210, we keep the position there and mark a keyframe. Now, from 210, we are going to move to 320, which is where the animation is going to end, well, the animation of the hand, because later we are also going to animate the camera. So we are going to take the illustration off the work table. Here in X, we are going to put 2,865. In Greek Y, we put minus 1,760. We leave the Z-axis at 0. We smooth out all these keyframes with F9. Now we come to the graphics editor to give the curve a little fluidity. These two here, well, we are going to give them an influence of between 60 and 62, around there. This one is the same, 60 or 62. We put this one at 100%, and this handle to the far right. We are going to do a preview to see how what we have looks. Well, okay, it's already taking shape. At this point, the chess piece is supposed to be on the table. So we select it and go to Edit, Split Layer, or Control plus Shift plus D key. This layer that has been cut off, we are not going to parent it to any layer. There it is. Now we have to continue with the animation of the wrist rotation. We select the layer here, key R, and here at the beginning of the timeline, we are going to set the rotation to minus 90 degrees on the Z-axis. It is important to mark a keyframe. We now move to second 120. And here we are going to set it, for example, 10 degrees. At second 2, we set it back to 0. We smooth these two keyframes with F9. We leave this one here linear and go back to the graphics editor. Now the handles, just like before, we are going to give them an influence of between 60 or 62%. And this one is the same, between 60 and 62. Well, this looks great. We have the arm and wrist animated. Now we have to animate the fingers. Let's start with the thumb. We'll go here to second 210, which is right where he leaves the chess piece and turns his hand back. Well, at this point, we select the middle part of the finger, R key, and here in Z rotation, we mark a keyframe. Now we go forward to second 320, around there. What happens is that we are no longer seeing the illustration. In order to see it, we can activate this Draft 3D option. This allows us to see all the elements that we have distributed in the 3D space, and not just the work table. And in this icon, we can increase or decrease the opacity of this entire space. Well, with this layer of the thumb selected, here at 320, we are going to modify the rotation. Let's put, for example, -7 degrees. As I've said before, I put these values because after having done some tests, they're the ones that have worked best for me. Okay, we softened these two keyframes with F9, and now we're going to do the same with the index finger. We're going to put ourselves here at 210. We unfold the rotation of the middle part of the finger and mark a keyframe in Z rotation. Here, we leave it at 0, and at 320 we do the same as before. We're going to put the rotation here, for example, at 35 degrees. Then we see that he leaves the tab, opens his fingers, and leaves. Perfect! These two keyframes are the same. With F9 we soften them. And now we're going to continue with the rest of the fingers. We select all of them, press R, and we're going to go to second one. We're going to mark a rotating keyframe on all the remaining ones. What I'm going to do now is mark the times and then the animation. So from second one, I'm going to move to second one, 27. And right there, we'll mark other keyframes on all the fingers. From 127, we'll move to second 210, and there we'll mark another one. At 320, which is where the animation ends, we'll mark new ones. Okay, so we've already marked the times. Now we're going to start with the animation. First with the middle finger. Here in second one, at the middle part of the finger, we're going to set -10 degrees. And here at the tip, notice, we're going to set a value of -37 degrees. We'll leave these two here at 0. Here, when the hand puts the piece on the table, the inertia of the fingers is to move downwards. So we are going to animate the rotation a little bit. Here, we put -5, and for the tip of the finger, for example, -20, so that when the hand puts the piece down, the finger moves downwards. Perfect. And here in these, at the end, when the hand goes backwards, it is assumed that the finger starts to stretch. So here we are going to put a value of 20 degrees for the middle part. We leave the tip of the finger at 10. There we see that it puts the piece down, it moves downwards, and when the hand goes backwards, the finger stretches again. Okay, perfect. Now we are going to do the same thing, but with the ring finger. We are going to put the second one here. Here we are going to put -10 for the middle part of the finger. A value of -20 degrees for the tip. We leave these two here at 0. Here we are going to do the same thing again. When you put the chip on the table, the tendency of the finger is to move downwards. So we are going to put -15 in the middle part and -20 at the tip of the finger. Or, well, not so much. Here, we put -10 in the middle part and -15 at the tip of the finger. Okay, I like that better. Now, here in these last keyframes, the finger stretches again. So we are going to put a value of 15 degrees here. and we are going to leave the tip of the finger at 0. That seems pretty good to me. There, we see that they go down, and there they stretch again. Okay, so we would have to do the same thing, but with the little finger. Here in the second one, we are going to put -15. In this one here, we leave it at 0. Here we are going to put -10 so that it goes down a little. And in the last keyframe, we're going to set it to 10 so that it can be seen up here again. There it is. Now, these 3 fingers, the U key, and all these keyframes, with F9, we smooth them out. And we're going to do a preview to see how it looks. Well, this looks great, but we can still give the animation a little more flow. I can now deactivate this draft 3D box. As I said, to give it a little more flow, we're going to select the tips of the fingers, which are the ones that end in 2, and the little finger as well. We're going to put ourselves here at second one, and we're going to count 2 frames forward, 1 and 2. Well, all these keyframes, those of the tips of the finger and the little finger, well, we're going to give them a little offset. Let's see how it looks now. Okay, much better. Here, at this point, when the hand goes backwards, we can select the arm layer. And with the pen tool, we can give this path a little arc. More or less around there. Let's see how it looks. These are details that are not very noticeable, but hey, they are there. Come on, let's continue. With this, we already have the animation of the hand. Now what we are going to do is add details to the composition. And we still have to animate the camera. Well, with right-click, we are going to create a solid. We are going to make it 3,000 pixels by 10,000, and it is going to be called Ground Eye. The color that I am going to put on it is going to be this one, in case you want to copy the code. Now I am going to put this solid below, and I am also going to convert it to 3D. And with the R key here on the x-axis, we are going to put a rotation of -90 degrees. I am going to activate 2 views to better see what we are doing. This viewer here, I'm going to put it in front view. And now, obviously, this floor has to be here at the base of the chess piece. So here on the Greek y-axis, now I'm going to move it down. And more or less, I'm going to leave it there so that it intersects a little with the chess piece, so that it doesn't stay too far away, more or less. I'm going to leave it there. Now this solid, with Ctrl+D, we duplicate it, and we're going to put an effect on it called chessboard. We'll put it there, and I'll also change the color. If you want to put the same color as me, this is the code, FF7979. We click OK, and now the width, we're going to increase it quite a bit. With this, we are going to create this kind of chessboard. We put a value of 260 here. Well, we can modify it at any time. For now, I am going to leave it at 260. And what I have to do now is, with these values here, well, move them until this chess piece stays on top of one of these squares. more or less around there. Now with a right click, I am going to create a camera. This is going to be 35 millimeters and with 2 nodes, for example. Now it looks from another perspective. Well, we select the chessboard layer again, and now we can adjust this piece more precisely. It is going to stay there more or less in that box. Come on, let's continue. What I am going to do now is to create a background. Again, right-click, New, Solid. And I am going to make it the size of the composition. We change the name. The color doesn't matter because we are going to put a gradient effect on it now. We put the solid at the bottom, and we're going to put the one called gradient ramp on it. We change it to radial ramp, we invert the colors, and this handle that we have here, we're going to put it right there in the middle. And the one we have down here, we move to the left. Well, here everyone can put the colors they want. Here for the white color, I'm going to put this code, AC120A. That red, I'll click OK. I'm going to go back to File, Import, and I'm going to bring this cement texture. I'm going to put this one above the solid in the background. And now, with the F4 key, we display the fusion modes and put it in overlay mode. Okay, there it is. What happens is we have to move it up a little bit so that it covers all this part. Okay, there it is, perfect. We're going to start animating the camera. Right-click, New, Null Object. We also convert it to 3D, and we parent the camera to it. We come here to the beginning of the timeline, press P, and mark a keyframe. But, well, before starting with the animation, we are going to do something else. This chess piece that we have hidden here, with Control plus Alt and the Home key, we center the anchor point, and with Control plus Home, we center it there in view. There it is. We also lower the scale a little, for example to 75%. Now what we have to do is position it. We are going to activate 2 views again. And here on the Greek y-axis, we are going to move it down until it goes a little bit over this layer here, which is the chessboard. Okay, so we select this piece, and on the Greek y-axis, we move it a little bit down. More or less around there. This viewer, if we put it in Custom View 1, we will see it much clearer. We select the piece again and move it a little bit to the left. More or less around there. There, we see the red piece. Okay, so there we are. We are going to move it 2 squares back. Right there, with Control plus the D key, we duplicate it, and we are going to move this copy to the right. Let it stay in this chess square. More or less there. Then, if necessary, we adjust them. We select both of them again, we duplicate them. We are going to put these ones down here, and we move them back 2 squares. 1 and 2 there. Now, we select them one by one, and we are going to change the square. We put this one here, and this piece we put in the other one. Okay, perfect. And if we now put the active camera, there we begin to see the shape that our scene is taking. Now we can start with the camera animation. We mark a keyframe in the position of the null at the beginning of the timeline. And we are going to put these values. Here we are going to zoom in quite a bit. We put, for example, 800 on the Z-axis. We are also going to move everything up a little bit. Here we put 1080. Here we display the transform options and the camera orientation. We are going to change the perspective. More or less around there, 355 degrees. Okay, from second 0, we go to second 4. Here, the position on the Z-axis, we put it at 0. We move everything down a little bit. We put 1070 on the Greek Y-axis. This last keyframe, with F9, we smooth it out. We are going to do a preview to see how it looks. Well, this looks great. We go here to second 4. With Ctrl+D, we duplicate the null, key U, and we delete these keyframes. We are going to mark some new ones in position and in X rotation. What happens is that this animation has to start a little earlier. It is going to start here at second 215. So we are going to put these two keyframes here. And before animating this null, it is important to relate the previous null to the new one. Okay, now we're going to move up to 615, around there, and we're going to continue with the animation. Here in Z, we're going to zoom in quite a bit. We're going to set it to -3000. We move everything up. We put 1200 on the Y-axis. Here we are going to modify the X rotation a little bit, for example, 5 degrees. Now, with F9, we smooth out all these keyframes. And so that the animation doesn't end when it reaches this point, notice that it stays stuck there. We are going to do the following. We select these two keyframes and move them a little to the right, so that they stay more or less below the second 7. Now, without moving the head, we mark 2 new keyframes, and these we can put wherever we want. We are going to put them at 820, which is exactly where the animation is going to end. We select all of them, we smooth them out again with F9, and now we are going to go to the graph editor to give a little shape to the keyframes of the position. Here we double-click and activate the continuous box. We are going to give it an influence of 60%. Now, we're going to move this handle up a little bit. More or less around there, so that instead of the camera stopping when it reaches this point, it's still moving backwards, but more and more slowly. Even here, if we want, we can also set the exact values. Here, we set the influence to 26, and here to 170. Okay, perfect. In this one, double-click and set the influence to 60%. Now we come to the rotation graph. We activate the continuous box, set the influence to 60%, and we're going to move this handle up a little bit, more or less around there. This one, double-click and set the influence to 60%. We're going to preview everything. Let's see how it looks. Well, it looks great there, but the hand doesn't have to be seen here anymore at this point. So, more or less around here, which is when it comes out of the composition dimensions. When it is no longer visible, we are going to select all these layers. We go to Edit, Split Layer, or Control plus Shift plus D key, and we delete all this. Here, in this null, in the last keyframes, we put ourselves there. And with the text tool, we can write here whatever we want. I am going to put, "Give me a like," for example. What happens is that the text has become very small. S key, and we scale it. I am also going to change the font. The truth is that I don't know which one, for example, this one. Now, this text, we also have to convert it to 3D. With Control plus Alt and the Home key, we center the anchor point, and with Control plus Home, it is placed right in front of the camera viewfinder. Look, well, here I am going to change the viewfinder to left view. Here we have the camera. Let's see if I can select it. There's the camera, and this one here is the viewfinder. So when we do Control plus Home, look where the text is placed, right in front of the camera. Okay? What happens with this text? I'm going to make it a little bigger, and I'm going to make the color white. And while I'm at it, I'm also going to put an effect. It's a paid plugin that actually works pretty well. But if you don't have this plugin, you can also put the glow that comes by default in After Effects. What happens is, I'm going to lower the exposure quite a bit, for example to 0.20 and the radius to 300. That's fine. Let's do a preview again. Let's see how it looks. Okay, so this looks spectacular. Look at how the text comes in there. It actually looks pretty cool. Well, the hand, the arm, and the fingers, I'm going to change the color of all these layers. I'll select them all and here in the fill. With the eyedropper, I'm going to put, for example, the color of the chess piece. This one here. Well, the truth is that it looks super cool. Look there when the hand leaves the chess piece. All these fingers move downwards and give much more flow to the animation. Okay, so we're almost there, but I'm still going to add a couple of effects. If you want to leave it like this at 30 frames, as we did at the beginning, perfect. This also depends on each one. I'm going to add an adjustment layer, and here I'm going to add the effect called and instead of 24 frames, I'm going to change it to 12. The truth is, I really like the way this effect looks in some animations. Not all of them, but in some, it looks pretty good. Another thing we can do is, here in the camera options, we're going to activate the field blur. Here the depth of field is off, we'll put it on, and the aperture, we'll put it, for example, 150. And look, here there are already parts of the scene that look out of focus. Well, what I want is for the camera focus to be right where the text is. So I'm going to activate two views again. Here we have the camera and this line that looks a little whiter than these other lines of the camera. Well, that is the focus of the camera, and we have to put it right where the text is. So here in focus distance, we are going to move it. More or less around there, it is well focused. Note that if I increase this value, everything becomes blurred except the text, which is exactly what I want. But I am going to leave the value at 150. Again, with right-click, I am going to create another adjustment layer. And this is going to be the grain. We go to Effects, Add Grain. Here from Preview, we change to Final Output. I am going to lower the intensity a little 0.7 around the monochrome color and the noise animation. Well, I am going to leave it at 0 so that it is static. I don't know if you can see it there, but the truth is that it gives it a very cool touch. Again, right-click, New, Solid, Black color, and this one is going to be called Vignette. We make it the size of the composition, we click OK, and we're going to put an effect called Circle on it. Here we change to Stencil Alpha. We also activate the Invert Circle box. And now, we're going to increase the radius quite a bit. For example, I'm going to put it at 700, a little more, 800. Okay, the feather, we're also going to increase it quite a bit. For example, 400. Now, the opacity of this vignette. With the T key, we display the opacity, and we put it at, for example, 50. Okay, there it is. To have a little more color depth, and so that these lines left by the highlights and gradients don't look so hard, what is known as banding. We can change from 8 bits per channel to 16. With the Alt key pressed, we click and change to 16. And with this, we're going to soften all those lines a lot more. Well, this looks special. And although the animation is already finished, we still have to make some adjustments, because here I am seeing something strange. Look here below the text, you can see this black line. That is because the glow of the text, by sharing 3D space with the floor layer and the chessboard layer, creates this kind of intersection and creates this black line, which really does not look good at all. But, well, we are going to solve this very easily. We go here to the text layer, right-click, New, Adjustment Layer, and we are going to put this adjustment layer right below the text. With this, what we achieve is, as if we were saying, separating the text layer from all the other 3D elements, as if they were in a different space. So now, just by putting an adjustment layer below it, we have solved this problem. And with the sound effects left, we have finished our animation, and it is working perfectly. If you get stuck at any step, or there is something you don't understand, write me in the comments and we'll fix it. And if you like the tutorial, leave me a good like so I know. See you in the next video.